For example, the octave mechanism on the saxophone is probably the most used key. That's this key here. And there are very different ways in which this key can be shaped and which this key can be placed. For example, this instrument has this key sitting up to the left here, which means for someone with good sized hands like myself, we have to roll from right to left, and it is quite slow and clumsy. With this saxophone, this key is now in line with my thumb, but we've also got a little bit of height, so this key is actually raised off above that button, which feels a little bit different. A totally different concept on this instrument is this key again is falling in line with my thumb, so I'm just pressing straight down. It actually has a roller though, so less movement, much easier to get around, again for someone with my sized hands. These keys in the middle are called the palm keys, and we don't actually play those for a little while until we develop some skill. But at this stage, at beginning the instrument, we do have to get around them comfortably. So small hands, for example, might have difficulty getting around these keys if they come out too far. So just like saxophones have different shaped keys, so do clarinets. Different shaped key work, different shaped rings, and depending on your fingertip size and your hand size, what's comfortable for one person may not be comfortable for the next. In fact, if your fingertips are too small for the size of these rings, you're going to find it virtually impossible to play. Some people do have reactions to different types of metal and metal plating. This instrument in particular has a black nickel plating to it, and most of the other clarinets in the cabinets have different types of metals, including silver, plated onto the keys. For young kids, Ashley's got here a curved head joint flute, which is relevant for short arms, is that right?
Excellent for younger players starting off, particularly with different methods, starting flute players at the age of 5 and 6, where they're 6'3", don't really have a problem playing a full-bodied flute, but for somebody with considerably shorter arms than myself, this is excellent. It allows for good placement of the lip plate, nice posture.
Anywhere from, I suppose, on eBay for $70, $80 up to handmade flutes for $25,000. How can instruments at that very bottom level work?
Basically they don't.
So here's a good example of two very different shaped head joints. I suppose it comes down to these are just a wind instrument like all of the other instruments we've looked at that require air to produce a sound, and the more air that we can get into the instrument, the easier it is to play.
Yes.
And based upon these different designs, as well as the different shapes of those embouchure holes and the different curvature of that lip plate and even the different size of the lip plate itself, these different head joints are going to suit different people's chins and lips.
We were talking about head joint design and more effective use of a player's air and air volume and air speed.
Yes.
To achieve either more focused sound or a nice warm jazz sound, which is why you don't get the options such as this in your $200 special flutes. They're stamped out high-speed mass production. The most attention to detail to do with a flute should be the head joint, and then the key work, and then the body of the flute. The key work needs to be a certain strength, but more importantly, the head joint needs to be efficient.
So on something like the $200 eBay special, if we like, we're not going to get sort of attention to detail like this chamfering or tapered the tapered design of a head joint, which would focus more air through?
Definitely not. You look at head joints such as this one, which is a handmade David Temby 14 karat rose gold. They retail for around the $4,500 mark. Beautiful sound, nice, warm and rich. And even in the different models, the chamfer is different on each one, which controls the airspeed in a different way, and you just don't get that quality in. Okay,
but how is that relevant, for example, for who's 10 years old and just starting out on the flute, who's obviously not going to be starting on a $4,500 flute? Do you still get features such as having a tapered tube or chamfering that will give more air into the instrument in that level of instrument?
Certainly you'll find features like that in the good quality student entry-level flutes. Because we have quite a range here at the music place, we have a range that have different shapes here, different diameters, different shapes, whether they're more an oval or almost square with rounded corners to a perfect circular. Yeah? And by being the young student beginner, one of those will suit. And the opportunity to come to a place where there's 15 to 30 different brands is that you get the opportunity to try them all, and that we determine which one gives maximum efficiency with least amount of effort.
It's really important, if you're going to be learning to play trumpet, to have a good quality instrument. You can't get away with a cheap substandard instrument when we're looking at trumpets. It is really imperative because of the different qualities in the tubing, in the metals that they use, in coatings on the valves, different designs of mouthpieces, that a better instrument requires less air to produce a sound, so it's much easier to play. A really poor quality instrument is very, very difficult to play, very resistive, and before long ends up underneath a bed. Most trumpets will come with a standard mouthpiece, but we prefer to do a proper fit out with you to make sure that the mouthpiece does suit your own lip shape and style of playing.